Welcome to Path to Peace with Todd Perlmutter. I'm your host, Todd Perlmutter. Our world is a projection of our collective consciousness. The more peace we bring into our lives, the more peace we bring into this world. So let the transformation begin. When we become overly stressed, depressed, unhappy, anxious, or angry, we get taken over by a mind virus. It is not dissimilar to when we get drunk, which also makes us lose our impulse control. And the same thing happens. We get tunnel vision, which is we can only see this moment right in front of us, this narrow window, and we do not see the bigger picture of how our actions will have consequences. And similar to how drinking can sometimes be used as that mistake we make, that impulsive decision we make to overconsume alcohol, it can stem from that same place of unhappiness, that we are already making bad choices, trying to feel better. And that mind virus of dissatisfaction, we could call it, takes us on a mental thought storm that consumes our entire attention and awareness. And that thought storm tends to focus on one of two things. Either we are fixating and obsessing on something that is just infuriating us or making us suffer immensely, and we cannot see past these thoughts. And we are just fuming internally about either our boss or a loss in our lives or a family member who's upset us. And we just go down that rabbit hole of hate and revenge, plotting and scheming, or even just, woe is me, why is life so unfair, nothing goes right, and we just slide down that slippery slope into despair. And oftentimes it's at this place where that second type of thought starts to enter our mind that takes us over. Much like that fungus that releases spores that, when they land on an ant, turn it into a zombie. And the spores of this fungus tell the ant to climb up a tree as high as it can, where then a fungus bursts through the ant, releasing spores that can scatter much farther. So it turns this ant into a zombie ant, and it is totally under the mind control of this fungus. And this is the nature of an impulsive decision, something we know we shouldn't do, that does not serve our best interests, that may bring a moment of relief at the expense of our long-term selves. And this can be to go get a substance. It can be to drink or smoke, to eat excessively unhealthy foods, to scream at someone, to sabotage someone, to destroy relationships. And because we've already lost our presence and our self-awareness, we have lost focus on the bigger picture and what aligns with our goals and values. And so we are helpless, seemingly, to these impulses. And we will mindlessly go get that substance, go do that harmful and destructive activity. And before we know it, we have done irreparable harm. We have fallen back into bad habits. We have let our emotions get the better of us. And To overcome this mind virus, we are going to need all of the medicine in our spiritual toolkit. That means there's some steps we need to take before it happens to build up that strong foundation of presence. And we're also going to have to prepare for when that moment comes so that when it happens, we have tools for that moment as well. The first thing we have to do is expand our awareness. When we do this, in those moments where we become myopic and have tunnel vision, it won't get so extreme, and we'll be able to see the space around the vision, and we'll see reality beyond our thoughts. And we do this by watching our thoughts and our mind a regular habit. We stay aware of whenever an impulse comes in, and without acting on it, which is our normal habit that we developed for decades, we watch how it comes and goes. And we do this over and over again, and we can still enjoy a thing. We can indulge in a pleasure, but we do it with full awareness of what it's going to do to our body, how it's going to make us feel later. But first, we just let that impulse come and go, and we become familiar with the nature of these impulses, and we develop a new habit. I don't react mindlessly to these impulses. I choose to act mindfully. I may indulge, I may enjoy myself, I may enjoy the pleasures of life as we are all here meant to do. But I don't believe that my source of relief, lasting happiness, deep purpose, and joy will come from these temporary, fleeting experiences. The second thing we can do to expand our awareness is to, when we look at objects around us, don't just see the object in the present moment, but see where it came from. See eternity in that object. See it going from stardust to this rocky earth, to nature shaping it, to the mining process, and the refining process, and the manufacturing process, and the delivery, and how it arrived at your door, and where it will end up in 5, 10, 50, and even a million years from now, when it will be long gone and meaningless and worthless. This is especially helpful when we want to buy things outside of our means, or indulge in shopping, or even when we just get a new car and it's so precious to us, and we get that extreme sense of pride and accomplishment, and we lose ourselves to that pride, and it gets to a point where we are so precious of our car that we'll get mad at anyone getting too close to it. And we can remember, when we lose ourselves in these moments, that this will break down one day, that I will not care about this car in 20 years. And we can just make a habit of this broadening of our perspective and seeing the big picture. And then when we do start to lose ourselves, whether it is to despair or pride, we can maintain a sense of that larger meaning in life. So much, if not all, of those moments in our lives that we get so worked up about, that give us so much stress from our day job or a fight with a family, we won't even remember in 10 years. But if we blow it up, if we quit without even having another job lined up, or if we scream or abuse or steal or destroy something or take revenge on a family member or a close friend, that friendship will be ended forever. But if we were able to see that larger picture, we would see that it was the argument that was possible to let go, and we didn't need to nuke the entire relationship. I have seen way too many families end up becoming separated because of one disagreement, one little issue that led to a huge overreaction, which really was unforgivable. We let our emotions get the better of us. We start to act in short-term ways with great long-term expense. Mistakes can be taken back, fixed, and remedied. But revenge and deliberately hurtful actions are much harder to heal. And so it is really essential, not even just for impulsive actions, but for our whole lives, to develop this expanded awareness, this heightened state of consciousness that recognizes the subtleties of our thoughts and emotions. When we are hungry, we feel like we could eat anything. And we quickly go from eating to fill our stomachs to eating for pleasure. And we are just sacrificing a future moment of pain and discomfort for this one present moment of brief pleasure. When we drink too much, we know we'll feel terrible tomorrow, but all we can see is this impulse, this urge. We're not thinking clearly. We're not present and self-aware. We are just laser focused on the fact that we have stress to relieve. We have something within us that is craving relief, and it does not have those positive, rejuvenating, healing methods to deal with it. And so it just sees what will give me that quick fix now. And so if we practice expanding our awareness, being mindful throughout the day, staying aware of our thoughts, and even dedicating some time every day to tune out everything else but witnessing our thoughts, either in meditation or just sitting in stillness, we will become so habitualized, have so much inner strength to understand on the deepest level that these impulses are not our boss. Our higher self, the witnessing presence, is the chooser. We choose what to act on. No matter how helpless we may feel to an addiction, we are all born free, and we can regain that freedom. And habits, no matter what impulsive choices we have, habits are like driving cars. And the more we act on a habit, the faster that car goes. And it builds up an inertia each time we act it out. And so every single time we let an impulse go by without acting on it, we are slowing that vehicle. We are taking away the inertia from that habit. And eventually, that car will stop. And it won't take years. It won't take decades. Simply, the more we have a thought go by, an urge or an impulse, the quicker that car slows down and comes to a stop. The more we act on good choices that actually serve our well-being, it's like putting that car in reverse, and we're just building momentum in the other way so that that old negative habit those impulsive choices we used to make where we would lose ourselves to those heavy emotions, no longer can even stop our progress. And here's why it won't take decades or years. If we smoked 20 cigarettes a day for 20 years, when we quit, we may have 1,000 urges in that first day. We may have 900 in the next day. But that is rapid progress. That is not something difficult. That is just allowing our old bad impulses to be that necessary teacher. Every urge, every thought teaches us about the state of our mind. And so whenever we find ourselves in a situation where we just know that an impulse is about to come up, that an urge is about to take over us, this is when we need to look at it. This is that tool from our spiritual toolkit for when we're in that situation that will help us get out of it. And that is to look deeper, to sit with it, and to remember that it is trying to teach us something. It is trying to teach us that when we are feeling down, it is easier to look to something negative to focus on outside of us than it is to deal with what is truly going on inside of us, which is we are suffering, we are unsatisfied, discontent, unfulfilled, and we are seeking relief. When we put it that way, we have the wisdom and awareness to know that this behavior that we want to engage in, whether it's screaming at our boss, screaming at a coworker, screaming at a family member, going back into an old habit, will not be the solution for the pain we're feeling. Poison is not medicine. And it may not be as quick a fix. And I really shouldn't use the word fix because it's not a fix. It's more of a Band-Aid on a heart attack. It's a quick distraction to engage in those negative habits. But it will be much more beneficial if we recognize what's going on inside, which will have been easier if we've been working on expanding that consciousness. And we go for a walk in nature. We go to take a run, exercise, to even go shopping, to do anything that is non-destructive, that can, instead of getting stuck with that negative energy inside of us, we allow it to move through us. So we keep moving. We don't let it stagnate. We don't let it build and build inside, turning us into a volcano ready to erupt. But we release it through yoga, stretching, breath work, meditation, some time in nature, or engaging in an act of compassion. Because all of these things lead to our lasting fulfillment. And it is more real than something that puts more stress on our body and mind. This is where the ritual of making tea, or any ritual, comes in handy because it takes us out of our mindset. And we put our 100% focus and attention onto this ritual. And that ritual can be brewing tea a certain way. It can be a spiritual practice, such as a mantra meditation. And after we've allowed that extreme emotion, that extreme urge and sensation to dissipate just a little bit, we can start to visualize on how we want the rest of our lives to look. Genuinely, we look beyond the point of revenge or the impulsive action, and we look to see how we want to design our lives. Does it involve taking this short-term destructive action? Or is there some way we can use our higher consciousness to come up with a strategy to bring about that future that we truly want, that our deepest selves want? We can even visualize our past with this person and see what kind of relationship do we have with them? What kind of person have they been? And are they really this worst moment that you've seen them at? Or is there something deeper to them? Is there more than the judgment and anger that we're feeling right now? And there usually is, because we are all deeply complicated. We are all traumatized or neglected in some way. We have all felt hurt and pain, and we are all just doing our best not to pass it on to others, and some of us are just doing a better job than others. And the last thing we can do, and we can do this all the time, but especially when we are in a heated disagreement or someone's really frustrating us, is to see beyond their words and their body, even their name and identity. And we can do this with everyone we look at until we see ourselves looking back, until we see the oneness looking back at us. It's always there. To see that same consciousness in someone else shining back at us, and we see ourselves in them, and we can expand our perceptions from the physical form and these words to that deeper level of reality, which is the energy that we are projecting and carrying with us, and that animates these bodies, which is so much more important. Because so much of the time, our words are not what we're truly wanting to say, what we truly think and feel. Oftentimes, when we are screaming at someone, we are begging to be loved. We are shouting from our own pain and wishing for someone to care. And sometimes it's too hard when someone's screaming at us to be that love. But if we are able to, that will not only heal the other person, but that will heal our own anger. Love truly is that healing source of life and transformational power that turns every other emotion into itself. And that love becomes so apparent when we realize that there really is only the one. And we would do exactly as someone else has done to us if we were in their shoes, if we had their brain wiring, if we had their experiences. Now, this doesn't mean we have to forgive and love an abuser or someone that's cruel. We can get away from them. We can step away. We can quit our jobs still. We can, even if we have to, disentangle from a relationship with a family member or friend. But we don't need revenge. We don't need an impulsive action that hurts ourselves and our future. We don't need to perpetuate the cycle of anger, revenge, and hatred, because we don't want to carry that with us. That doesn't add to our lives. It only subtracts. And so instead of engaging in impulsive behavior, we love ourselves for relief. And instead of taking our anger out on someone else, we love them. Perhaps from a distance, perhaps temporarily, creating some space. But the last thing we want to do is make those forever irreversible decisions in a moment where we are not thinking clearly, where we have lost ourselves in our presence, taken over by anger or hatred. And so we can always act for our highest good with our utmost wisdom and presence. And that is how we will have a great life without regrets and full of love. Thank you so much for listening. And if you found this podcast valuable and wish to support the podcast and help keep it going for future episodes, you can support us at eastwesticism.org. That's eastwest, ICISM.org. And it goes a long way. Much love. You have been listening to Path to Peace with Todd Perlmutter. Being here and putting in this important and noble work is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself and others. If you found this podcast even a little helpful, please make sure to leave a review so it can reach others who may be in need. And remember, the path to peace starts with a single step.